with the unfortunate assignation of Agent XXX.
Yeah, which is not subtle at all.
Welcome to Gold, Diamonds, and Death, a James Bond podcast. I am your 00 host, Jonathan Watkins. I am a writer for all things under the Cinemasins brand name and a co-host of the Behind the Scenes podcast. Joining me each and every week for this endeavor. Most people don't know this, but he is a championship skier and can tell us exactly how that jump off the mountain was done. He's also the co-founder of Cinemasins, co-host of the weekly podcast Recotopia, and one of my good friends, Mr. Chris Atkinson.
Hello.
How are you today, sir?
How's it going?
It's going, it's going pretty good. We're going to talk about The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yep.
I would say one of the more popular, at least Roger Moore Bond films.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into, I guess, to more our opinions about it later. But yeah, we're going to talk about The Spy Who Loved Me. So let's just jump on into this.
Alrighty.
Our first segment is something we like to call Eon Flux.
This is a journey.
I'm gonna make a movie!
We have to go back, Kate.
Wow, how did you know all that stuff?
I did my research.
I don't understand any of this.
What the fuck is going on?
We are going to scour through the history of Eon Productions, give you all the highs and lows that went into the makings of these films. This week, that film would be The Spy Who Loved Me. Carly Simon will tell you all about that in her theme song, which actually isn't the title of the song.
No.
Nobody Does It Better is the first Bond song that is not the title. Well, unless you count like Dr. No and From Russia with Love, which I don't either.
Yeah.
So this is the first official Bond theme song that is not called the title is not the same as the title of the movie. Is the title in the song though?
Yeah.
Why am I?
It's in the lyrics.
Okay.
It's really shoved in there. It's almost like they said, well, you got to have the title of the song in this, in title of the movie in the song. So she like shoehorns it in there, and I was like, yeah, no, this doesn't really go along with it at all. And really the song is, to me, it was just about a dude who's really good at having sex. That's pretty much what that song's about. So I
mean, nobody does it better.
Nobody does it better. So,
and I mean, based on what all happens in this entire franchise, I kind of believe her. I think that might be accurate.
Yeah.
But anyways, this is the 10th film in the official franchise. It is the third to star Roger Moore, which I found interesting because whether you like this or not, this is the one where I think they realize what they want to do with Roger Moore in these films. Like this is kind of where this is the one where everything's kind of coming together, which is interesting because I think with Connery, that's also the case with his third film, Goldfinger. Now, mind you, From Russia with Love was really good and was way better than Man with the Golden Gun. And Dr. No is probably better than, Dr. No is definitely better than Man with the Golden Gun. So I'm not saying there were bad films before Goldfinger, but I'm just saying Goldfinger was kind of when everything just kind of clicked into place. And I kind of think that's what happens here. Like I said, whether you like it or not, I think you could still agree that this is kind of what these movies are going to be like moving forward with Roger Moore in them. Okay, so The Man with the Golden Gun, going back to that for a second, that was the previous film, the film we talked about in our last episode. It performed poorly, obviously, not as well as the ones prior to it. Both box office and critically, it didn't do great. No one really liked it. So this became a big concern for, I guess, Broccoli and just trying to get, they wanted to kind of right the ship, I guess, make things a little bigger and, more Bondish. They had some problems, though. Harry Saltzman, we talked about this a little bit last episode. He ends up having to sell his half of the Bond franchise. I didn't get too specific into it, but it was something he had some financial troubles. He had a lot of personal issues too. So
he had some debts with the Swiss bank, and apparently notices kept coming in, and he just put them in drawers and stuff like that, and not even pay attention to it. And he was also bad at he was just bad at other business ventures, basically, is what it came back to.
And his wife had been recently diagnosed with a terminal cancer. So and he also I read somewhere an interview, he suffered from some bouts of depression. There was a lot going on there just personally. But what he tried to do initially, why this caused some problems with the production, was he tried to use his shares in the Bond franchise as collateral for the debt he owed. And of course, Broccoli was like, yeah, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
And then at one point he was going to sell his shares to, I think, Columbia Pictures. And eventually Broccoli allowed him, basically, like, agreed if he would sell his shares to, I think it was United Artists, right? Oh, I guess I just didn't write that down. Anyways, he was trying to sell his shares to the studio as opposed to, he didn't want to sell them to Broccoli. And then this caused an issue because there was a distribution agreement with United Artists that if they didn't make a Bond film every 18 months, within every 18 months, United Artists would lose their rights. So that was a problem. And then it just like him kind of like arguing with Broccoli about what could be done was kind of making a lot of issues happen there. So eventually they did agree on something, and he sold his shares, and he was out. The other issue they were having, they couldn't find a director. Guy Hamilton was supposed to do it. He left in November of 1975, though, because he got offered the opportunity to do Superman, which he actually ends up not doing. Richard Donner obviously directs that movie, but that's why he rolled. So I guess he was dealing with that for a couple years, because Superman didn't come out. Well, it came out a year after Bond, so I think it came out like 3 years after.
Yeah, it's like 1978.
Yeah. And then Spielberg threw his hat in the ring. He wanted to direct, and he had just directed Jaws, which is kind of funny to me because there's a character named Jaws in this movie.
Yep.
But Broccoli said, "Yeah, no, we're not letting you do this." I didn't see why. I just saw that it was rejected. They just decided not to use him. And then Lewis Gilbert, who had directed You Only Live Twice, he ended up getting the job. He had just directed a war movie that Broccoli was really impressed with and decided to bring him back. The other thing, Ian Fleming just allowed the title to be used for some reason, would not allow him to use the plot, which we'll get into that more when we talk about this very bizarre book. I don't even know how they would have filmed the book. So that's a whole other thing. I don't know how much you know about the plot of the book.
I don't know anything about it. All I know is that they couldn't use the book as a basis for the screenplay. So it's weird that they couldn't, because like I said, when we get into that, I can't figure out why they would want to. So it's a weird situation. So, and maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe this is exactly what they would have done with this book. I mean, they had changed a whole bunch of stuff before, so it's not
exactly. Exactly. So this would be the first movie in the official franchise. Ian Fleming's name is not above the title, which is odd because it will come back with Moonraker, which is very strange that it comes back with Moonraker, but we'll talk about that more when we talk about Moonraker. A lot of writers were commissioned since they had to come up with an original story to go along with this title, The Spy Who Loved Me, which is a wonderful title, by the way. I'm not shocked they wanted to use it. Cary Bates, he was mostly known for writing comic books. Although he did, oddly enough, his one screenplay credit I could find was the 1992 Christopher Columbus: The Discovery.
Yeah.
There was like all those Christopher Columbus movies came out that, or it's like we had 1492. I think there was like I heard about one the other day too. It was like a British movie or something I didn't even know about. Came out that year too, because obviously that was the
500 year.
Yeah, 500 years. So he wrote a script that brought Tatiana Romanova back from Russia with Love, trying to stop Spectre. Hugo Drax was the villain that was created for that script, and Hugo Drax will be the villain in Moonraker. So he'll pop back up. They decided not to go with that. Anthony Burgess comes in. He's probably most known for writing the novel Clockwork Orange. I think that's the only thing I really know. He's wrote a ton of novels. But, I mean, that's just the big one. he had a draft. It featured a new criminal organization called Chaos, which I forgot to look that up. Isn't that Get Smart? Yes, it was. It was Control.
Control.
Yeah. And then but there was, oh no, Chaos is the international organization of, Control was the good guys. That was like Get Smart and stuff. And then Chaos, but it was spelled K-A-O-S.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I remember that now. All right. It's been a minute since I've watched Get Smart. Anyways, he had a draft featured a new criminal organization called Chaos. They were trying to assassinate Queen Elizabeth II by bombing the Sydney Opera House.
Okay.
So there's John Landis.
Yes.
Yeah, wrote a screenplay about Bond stopping a kidnapping of the Pope. John Landis, of course, if there are people that don't know who we're talking about, he Animal House would come out maybe 3 years after they were trying to get this going, 78, and he would obviously become a very huge director eventually, obviously very controversial in some ways, but yeah. John Landis has had a pretty long career. I mean, he's still alive. I don't know if he's really making anything anymore.
No. He had his peak in the 80s, and then he still came out with stuff in the 90s, but it wasn't. Yeah, they weren't big.
God, he really did in the 80s. I actually heard an interview with him where because he did Animal House, and then he did Blues Brothers, and then he did American Werewolf in London. Was those the first three? I don't remember if Into the Night was next, but then Into the Night came out a couple years later and it bombed. And he was like, I don't understand though. He's like, I did the exact same thing I did in my previous films. He was, but then after that, he does like Three Amigos, Spies Like Us. So I mean, Coming to America, which might have been his biggest hit, actually. Yeah, Trading Places would have been before Into the Night. I knew there was another one I was missing.
Yeah,
Into the Night's actually not bad either. It just
I've never seen it.
Well. Yeah, it's okay. It's not great. I mean, it's probably the lesser of those first like 5 films. He also did. Obviously, he was on Twilight Zone, the movie, which was there's a lot of bad stuff that happened there.
Yep.
We won't get into that. Okay, because it has nothing to do with this. Anyways, he wrote that screenplay. So they finally just bring Richard Maibaum back in, which what I'm getting to the point now is like, why aren't you just starting with Richard Maibaum like every time?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Because anytime they seem to go away from him, he comes back.
Yeah.
Although they don't completely go with his draft, he supposedly combined some of the elements in the other ones. It did involve Spectre. He brought Blofeld back. Broccoli decided not to go with that because he felt it was too political. And then when Lewis Gilbert got hired, he brought on this guy, Christopher Wood. Christopher Wood, one thing he did, he created Jaws. That was Broccoli wanted a villain with sharp teeth. So he created Jaws. Or with metal teeth, sorry, not
yeah, isn't there's something in the book that this is loosely based off of in the book, right? Because this is the one thing from the book that they were able to kind of like change the name of it's obviously not Jaws in the book, it's some other name.
There's like some mobsters in the book, and there's one that's similar to what Jaws ends up being. Yeah, no, that's correct. So Christopher Wood, he also had to remove all references to Spectre and Blofeld because Broccoli, that whole thing with Thunderball was still going on at the time, and with everything else delaying production, he didn't want to take any chances, which ended up being smart because Kevin McClory, who was the one that was suing them, he actually won the rights in 76. So that would have been a problem if they had kept all that in there. So because of that, they decided to use the KGB in the story. And then obviously they create the main villain, Karl Stromberg. I thought it was interesting, though, the Russian government felt that a lot of Bond films were anti-Russian. So that's why when you watch this movie, there is definitely some... There's obviously some between the British and the Russians. There's a little bit of, I don't know, like a falling out or whatever you want to call it. But the KGB are definitely presented more as allies in this movie. They're actually trying to they have the same goal, basically. So there's definitely still some like, we don't trust the Russians stuff in here, but they're not really the bad guys. And that's why. Because he wanted to make sure there wasn't an issue with all that stuff. And then, hey, they bring back our old friend Tom Mankiewicz. He came in to do an extensive rewrite, but was uncredited. Vernon Harris, who wrote the script for Oliver, which was the 1968 Best Picture winner, He also came in and did some uncredited rewrites. I could not find what exactly they changed, but they came in and did some stuff. I read something. I think Mankiewicz kind of changed some stuff with the Barbara Bach character, but other than that, I couldn't find a whole lot. So as far as like there's a really, really awesome bad guy layer in this movie, which is of course Ken Adams.
Coming back.
Did not want to repeat what he did in You Only Live Twice, so they actually built a new soundstage at Pinewood. It was like $1.8 million or something to build this thing. It included a water tank capable of storing a little over 5 million liters. The set was so huge that the cinematographer Claude Renoir, he had a hard time lighting it because his eyesight was not great. So they had an issue.
Is it Renoir or is it Renoir?
I think it's Renoir, right? Because I'm thinking like...
because I know French, it's probably, I don't know, it's Renoir.
I think that's right too, because I think that's how I've always heard, like Jean Renoir. I think I've always heard that.
Yeah, he is the grandson of the painter.
Yeah, but he was having some issues with his eyesight, so he was having a really hard time lighting it because it was just so big. The exterior, though, was miniatures mostly. There was an abandoned taker, apparently, that Shell let them have, but due to insurance and safety issues, they had to go with miniatures. Those are some awesome miniatures, though. I had no idea.
Yeah, they are.
Until I read about it. The shark tank was also filmed, and it was filmed in the Bahamas. It was a live shark swimming in a saltwater swimming pool, which I thought was interesting. Which, by the way, I did want to mention, this movie was shot on location in Egypt and Italy, and then all the underwater stuff was in the Bahamas, and then at Pinewood Studios, obviously, they built that one set that they used. So I wonder does that set still exist, I guess? I don't know. It's weird because you would think if they spent that much money on it, they wouldn't like just tear it down. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard.
They changed up just some other interesting things. They changed up they have a different car in this one. They went with the Lotus Esprit. Is that cool looking that red car? And then there's that one bit where the car becomes a submarine. There were 7 models created for that. One of them was actually a fully equipped submarine, which I thought was interesting. Or model.
For every single transformation you see, there is a different vehicle that they had to build for that particular
it's
thing.
insane the detail that went into that. And I mean, you can tell. I mean, it looks good. I mean, you know, I think it looks better than it probably would even today, because today they would just use computers probably. I mean, it would still probably look good, but it would just... I thought that was more interesting. While they did shoot at the pyramids, because they did on location shooting in Egypt, they had to replace a lot of that with miniatures because, once again, they had lighting issues. I don't think it was the same reason they had lighting issues, but they just couldn't. Yeah,
you can't just light up all the pyramids and so yeah.
That's the cinematography in this movie though is insane. All that Egyptian stuff, that's usually what sticks with me. Them running when they're trying to track down Jaws. It's
probably one of the more memorable parts of this movie for sure.
Yeah, that's like when I think of Bond, like that's a scene that always pops up in my head. So we mentioned at the beginning, you being an expert skier.
Yes,
you know all about this. But Bond skied off that mountain. That was inspired by a Canadian Club whiskey advertisement in Playboy magazine. What I thought was funny though, Sylvester Stallone is the one in the magazine, not in the movie.
Right.
But in the magazine, he's the one doing the stunt.
Yeah.
And I'm just like picturing Sylvester Stallone like, yeah, man, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. The stunt itself just cost like $500,000, which at the time was the single most expensive stunt.
Yep.
At the time.
I'm sure that's been passed. That was the main reason for that was they got up on top of this mountain and the weather got bad. And so they weren't able to shoot for a couple of days. So that means you're paying a whole bunch of crew to do nothing, basically.
Exactly. But it's a really cool looking stunt.
It is. It's great.
It makes me think of like that, which we'll talk about this when we talk about Goldeneye, but like, I don't know, like the difference between that and like him going off the mountain and catching up with the plane. Like, I don't know why. That's what I thought of though. I was like, because I don't even know if this is possible, which I guess it technically is possible because it was done. But but it's crazy to think that is possible. Like I think our our brain today would be like, oh, that's crap. You know, like there's no way that could happen, but it did.
Yep.
So you couldn't even do a survives this scene because somebody did survive it. So it's crazy. So the cast, Roger Moore, we've already talked about. Of course, he's back. He has often said this, or in past, obviously he's passed away, but he has cited in the past this is his favorite Bond film that he was in. I can't blame him.
Yeah, he says it even on the behind the scenes of this on this movie. He says it's one of it's his favorite,
which is not surprising at all. I'm sure it was fun. We got Barbara Bach, Mrs. Ringo Starr.
Yep.
I think they're still together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, 1981 to present, they are still together.
All right.
She is 75 years old. Good for Barbara Bach, but she plays Anya Amasova, a Soviet KGB agent, with the unfortunate assignation of Agent XXX.
yeah, which is not subtle at all.
And this movie has silliness in it, but for some reason that stands out. Like, it just, every time they say it, it just sounds so ridiculous. Like, you're just like, what? Why? Like, give her a number.
Yeah, and the first time you're introduced to her is she's having sex with another agent, and
which I mean, we'll get more into her performance and everything as we talk about the review. But yeah, I felt that was a little unfortunate. Catherine Deneuve was wanted to play the role. Deneuve, that's right.
Catherine Deneuve.
Wrong. Catherine Deneuve, famous actress around this time, wanted to play the role. She was even willing to cut her normal rate. She was willing to go from $400,000 to $250,000, but Broccoli refused to pay higher than $80,000, which is funny when you consider they're spending like $2 million on a water tank. But I don't know. That would have been weird. I'm trying to picture like Roger Moore and her acting off each other, and I think I kind of like that it's Barbara Bach, but I could be wrong. I mean, maybe that would have.
I don't know.
Kurt Jurgens plays the villain. He plays Karl Stromberg. His whole thing is that, which is one of the crazier things about this movie, he wants to basically make World War III happen, and so everyone will then want to live underwater, I guess. This is
Yep. Yeah, and as you know, this is the thing. I don't think his plan would work even if he got the nukes to fire by the end of this movie. But that's the thing that these Bond movies always do, is where they get a villain whose plan is so insane that, you know, that there's no way it would work anyway. I think that's the point a lot of times. But you also, you know, as the spies, it's not so much they have to save the people that he's going to kill, obviously, even though his plan's not going to work. But yeah, I don't think there's any hope of this being a thing because the U.S. and Soviet Union start blowing each other up.
But I think I don't mind it as much because, like, I kind of want to live in that place because it's like really cool. Like, I don't know, I'm not a big I'm not a big ocean person, but like, I don't know, the idea of just having like this underwater facility, I don't know, it's pretty fascinating.
I said Soviet Union, it's just plain old fucking Russia at this point.
Yeah, no worries.
But yeah, we've seen a lot of this. So like the Goldfinger thing, I mean, his plan is, you know, it's like he's quite mad. Yes, he is. He's quite, like, they don't show these villains as like mad. They seem very sane. But they are insane.
Yeah, 100%. So his henchman, we've already talked about, is Jaws, or one of his henchmen. That is played by he's played by the late Richard Kiel, who I think I most know from, I mean, outside of this, I must know him for Happy Gilmore. I believe that's Mr. Gilmore's. I always think whenever I see him.
Yep.
Will Sampson from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and David Prowse, who of course was Darth Vader, or was in the suit of Darth Vader. They were considered for the role, but which I could see, like, all the Will Sampson might have been interesting, but I think Richard Kiel's kind of, I mean, I've already kind of discussed my like or dislike of the character of Jaws, or how much interest I have in it, but I do think Richard Kiel is good. Like, he's doing exactly what needs to be done in that scenario. So, and he'll come. Yeah. He does.
By the
come
way,
back.
just as an aside, yes, it is the Soviet Union that's going through. I always get the back and forth of which one it is, but it is the Soviet Union during this time. It dissolves in 91. Yeah. Anyway. Yes, I love Richard Kiel in this. I actually think I like Jaws more than you do, but I can see him being overrated as a villain.
Yeah, he's good in this. I think it's more like, does he come back in Moonraker? Maybe he comes back and
he does. He comes back, but it's like, isn't he getting married or something
weird? I can't remember.
Yeah,
it's just
it's like he's totally fine after he's not a bad guy anymore, and he's found a woman, and it's like it's
really bizarre.
It's either that one, or it's like A View to a Kill where he shows up getting married. I can't remember.
I can't either. He's totally fine in this. I just I don't know. I think he's just a little. People mention him a lot more. They mention some of the other, I think, more interesting like henchmen and stuff. But it's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him. And I love Richard Kiel. He seems like a really cool guy too, from everything I've heard. Carolyn Monroe, who I forgot was in this. I've seen her a lot more in the last like 20 years or so when I've been getting into like Hammer horror films and stuff like that. She was in just a lot of stuff around that time, like Mario Bava films and stuff like that. She pops up in some of that stuff. But she plays Naomi. She's Stromberg's like personal something or other. Like at first it's like an assistant, but she also is like an assassin and a pilot. And I don't know. We're going back, and as usual for these earlier Bond movies, she was dubbed by Barbara Jefford, and I don't know why she was. I mean, I've seen Carolyn Monroe act, and she's perfectly good. I mean, she can, she doesn't have like a really thick accent or anything, so I don't know what the reasoning behind that is. But Jefford had previously dubbed the Daniela Bianchi character in From Russia with Love, so I guess she was a good one to bring back in. But anyways. A few more I'll mention. Jeffrey Keane, he plays Sir Frederick Grey, which is the British Minister of Defense. I bring him up too mainly because he'll be back. He's in 5 more films, which I didn't remember that. Lois Maxwell, Desmond Llewellyn, Bernard Lee, they're all back. Nothing that happens really with them that's any different than recent films, but they are back. They're in it. The gadgets definitely become a little more, little bit more present in this one. So. And then I'll mention Michael Billington. He plays Sergei Barstov, who was the former lover of Anya, which is the one that, she's trying to figure out if Bond killed him or didn't, and all that kind of stuff. The main reason I bring him up, though, was that he had screen tested for James Bond previously. So he's another one that screen tested for James Bond and then actually got in the movie as like somebody else later on. The end credit scene mentions Bond is returning to For Your Eyes Only, which doesn't happen, and that's because the number 1 movie of 1977, Star Wars, created such a phenomena that Moonraker ends up being the next film they do. Nobody Does It Better, we've already mentioned. This was composed by Marvin Hamlish, written by Carol Bayer Sager, and it was performed by Carly Simon. First song in the franchise to have a different title than the film, as we mentioned. It was also nominated for Best Song, and it lost to You Light Up My Life, which are actually 2 songs that are kind of similar in weird ways. Hamlish composed the score as well because John Barry couldn't work in England because he had tax issues. So he wasn't allowed to work in England. So, but I think Hamlish does a really good job here. I thought it was. I kept reading that it has a bit of a disco theme to it.
Kind of, but I don't. I mean, and we've also got to remember that disco, as we would come to know it, wasn't actually what disco really was.
Yeah.
Like we think of Saturday Night Fever, but that's
which also
not
came out this
what
year.
Disco really was. Yeah, but it's not really what it was, and I haven't delved deeply enough into it to know, but I can maybe see a little bit of that, like just a little bit in the bass line, a little bit maybe, but I don't know, but. I don't think of this as really disco. So
it's not that broader type of disco like you're saying that we think of, that almost by the time we were old enough to even know what's going on, it was kind of being parodied. Like the Friday the 13th theme song in part 3, where it really brings in that like wow, that kind of stuff. Also, they used a couple of pretty popular scores within it. Dr. Zhivago theme pops up early on. with I think it's Barbara Box doing something, and then the theme from Lawrence of Arabia is used pretty well.
Yep.
In some of the desert stuff.
Yeah, the Dr. Zhivago thing, I think, is when she's opening up the case for the.
Correct. That's what it was. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Which is a great theme for a movie that is okay at best.
Right. Yep. I agree.
Sorry to the two Dr. Zhivago lovers that are listening to this podcast. No, that I'm sure a lot of people love that movie. That's probably not nice. The movie was a hit. 185.4 million worldwide. 46 of that was in the U.S. Finished 8th at the U.S. box office. Like I said, Star Wars. And this is 77 is really when you start seeing like kind of what's going to eventually be what is kind of. I mean, throughout the 80s, you're still going to get like a lot of adult dramas and stuff in the top 10. But like this is Star Wars is in here. Close Encounters is in here. Smokey and the Bandit. Saturday Night Fever. These were all just like monster hits that, finished a little above it. Also, The Goodbye Girl and A Bridge Too Far and the Deep. I didn't know The Deep was that popular of a film. I guess because of Jaws.
Yeah,
it was another Peter Benchley because it's not good. So
yeah,
not that factors into box office all the time. But interestingly enough, Oh God, the movie with George Burns, and is John Denver in the first? I think he is in the first one. Because I think I actually made a reference to that in a recent Sun script. And then Annie Hall also came out that year, won Best Picture. It was number 10 at the box office. I wonder how many Woody Allen films finished in the top 10. There can't be that many.
I don't know.
And I maybe like Hannah and Her Sisters or something like that. I don't know.
Could be.
I'd have to look at that, but that might be the only one. I don't know. It was also critically successful. There were people that didn't care for it. I mean, as there always are, but it was one of the more critically successful of the early films, and that's carried on. It's still really well regarded as top tier James Bond, especially for Roger Moore. I mean, I rarely hear somebody say anything other than this as the best Roger Moore film. I'm sure it's happened, but. You're going to get people that love For Your Eyes Only or maybe Live and Let Die. I don't know, because I can't imagine. I can't imagine somebody saying View to a Kill is the best Roger Moore film, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's someone out there. It's like people that say Halloween 3 is the best Halloween film. So.
Yep.
Those weirdos exist. No, I'm just kidding. You're not weirdos. You're lovely people entitled to your own opinion. Is there anything else you had to add to the...
You may have to go back over some of the topics, but I do remember if you have them listed when you were getting to each one of the things, because there were a couple of things that I thought were interesting that I wanted to add to them. But I don't remember everything. You may have to remind me of the topics you hit so that I can remember what's about them. But I do know one of them was when Renoir could not see the whole set and they couldn't light it well and everything. Ken Adam asked Stanley Kubrick to come to the set, and Kubrick said, I don't want to get on the set and cause a big scene and everything. And Ken Adam said, I promise you no one will ever know that you're on the set. And so Kubrick came in and looked at the set, and Ken Adams like asking him, how do we light this thing? And Kubrick's idea was to light it with floodlights. So that's why there you see a ton of floodlights on the submarine or the tanker set. That naturally, quote unquote, light the whole thing, which was the problem that they were going to run into. What else was on there? Oh, the other thing was the tanker, which was all models, apparently that was so good that the people who or I guess the captain of that ship or whatever had no idea that was a bunch of models. And they said that, this is, and the guy talking about this is like, this is probably the best compliment you can get about your own models, is that even when the former captain of that ship can't even tell the difference between what was real and what was not on screen. That was another thing that was
That's
I thought
super
was
cool.
Yeah, that was really interesting. The stunt, the ski stunt So the stunt was in this magazine, and so they go and they just like, well, they were like, how do we do this? And they were, let's just go find the guy. So they find the guy, and the guy's like, well, I didn't do the stunt, but I can do it. And I know it can be done. And so they're really kind of like trusting that this guy was going to be able to do the stunt, even though it had not been performed successfully before. And they were he was saying that the only place they could do it is somewhere completely different. They ended up shooting it in Canada. And then there was one final touch that I think Christopher Wood may have added to this. I think it's Christopher Wood. They said was the idea behind this, was that when the parachute opened, it would be the Union Jack.
Correct.
So that was something that apparently brought a huge amount of applause to British audiences when that happened.
Yeah, and I think was it Philip was there? I almost put that in, but then I had a bunch of other stuff. But it was like at the attending the screening, it was like Prince Philip or something, was like he even stood up for that. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Charles. Charles, Prince of Wales during the Union Jack parachute scene. I have never seen a reaction in the cinema as there was that night. You couldn't help it. You could not help but stand up. And then he said even Prince Charles stood up. So,
yeah.
I thought that was cool. Yeah. But I had not come across the Kubrick thing or the thing you mentioned about the miniatures, about how the captain didn't even know. So that's really cool. I mean, I didn't know it was miniatures, but I wouldn't know what it.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, there's. They're definitely getting better with all of that, practical stuff, and then we're going to get into a digital age where a lot of things are hard to tell whether it's digital or not, but then other things are very too easy to know that they're digital. So it's weird.
The thing with digital, I think, is just there's so much reliance on the budget that you don't necessarily you aren't as handicapped maybe if you're doing practical stuff sometimes, because you can find other ways to do it, or you have like stuntmen that are just crazy. They'll be like, yeah, man, just give me like $50 and a pack of smokes and I'll go do this for you. Right now, I think with digital, because digital, like, I don't ever want it to come across that I don't think digital effects are good. Digital effects could be fucking amazing.
They can be great. It's just that there's times where they use them as for characters and things like that where there's obvious, like, it's just, there's just too much eye candy bright colors and stuff thrown into your eyes.
Or like if the budget's not there, especially I've noticed this in like lower budgeted action films, like when they digitize like the squibs and the bullets and stuff, like it just doesn't look good. Like it looks terrible. So that's my only thing with digital. It's just a little more reliant on budget than I think sometimes practical is. Practical could be reliant on that too at times, but I don't know. I just felt like there were always ways, and I think we're more forgiving for practical because it's just like you've always said. It's like you could touch that. That's actually something that's happening. Yeah. All right, so let's. We've kind of gone over all the background stuff. And now we're going to talk about the film itself a little bit. And this is a segment we like to call a review to a kill.
I've got you in my sights.
Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
There's no need to shout. I'm not shouting.
Why don't you stop your whining and get on with it? I've heard this shit before.
We are going to give you our thoughts on whatever film we are discussing, and this week we are, of course, discussing The Spy Who Loved Me. So, Chris, what is your kind of overall feeling about The Spy Who Loved Me?
A few years ago, when I was still working at Hollywood 27, a Bond fan there asked everybody to rank their top 5. And this one ended up number 1 of all time for me.
And now you hate it.
There is some... Huh? Well,
and now you hate it. I'm just kidding.
I still love it. And I like this better than every Sean Connery, and I know that's sacrilege for some, but I still like this better than all of any one particular Sean Connery movie. because it's just everything seems really tight and together, and even though a lot of the stuff we've seen before, like this is the third time there's been a fight on a train. This is at least the second time we've had a ski scene.
Won't be the last either.
You know, this is the second time, because they did this in You Only Live Twice, where a big ship swallows a smaller ship.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
So
it's at least the second time that's happened. So there's a lot of repeat stuff, and then you have a villain that is pretty much Blofeld, even though he's Stromberg in this. He's pretty much Blofeld. In fact, I didn't see any verification on this, but that shark tank that he sends his assistant to looks exactly like one that Blofeld uses in a previous movie, which could be You Only Live Twice. I can't remember.
I can't either. I know you're talking about though.
But it looks exactly like that same one that they used. So there's a lot of repeat stuff in this, but Roger Moore is he's more assured in the role now. At this point, he's getting to the point where it's hard to see anybody else in the role. Like he's actually taken ownership of what Bond is now at this point. For me, I mean, even though people are still probably in this era comparing him to Connery, I'm at this point going, this was an era where this is Roger Moore's Bond. This was his Bond. But I like everything about this. The action scenes are really fun. The Ken Adams set's back, which is like I said, Ken Adams is as much as part of Bond as anything, as much as Connery, as much as Ian Fleming. Ken Adams is kind of key in all of this, and so I really dig it, and I like the fact too, even though this is one of those things where it's going to sound mean. I don't think much of Barbara Bach as an actress in this movie. It sounds super mean, but I think she's kind of wooden. But I like the fact that there's a character finally that's kind of kicking ass, although they still have to make her a victim by the end of the movie, which I didn't like, where she's tied up and in a bikini, of course, and Bond has to go save her. That's one thing I don't like about it, but it does show someone who's at least the intellectual equal of Bond, because there's a great scene in here where they're going back and forth about what they see in this little film of the submarine. I don't know. Did we get really into the plot of the other little thing about this? The submarine
we didn't
thing.
get too much into the plot specifics other than the underwater city thing, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what Stromberg wants to do, but like there's the plot that drives it into this is that somebody has stolen the plans to this submarine detection system. It'll remind you a lot of Hunt for Red October when you watch this.
Yeah.
They can detect submarines even when they're quiet and they can't be found on sonar or whatever. So somebody's stolen that, wants to sell it. And so the agents both from Russia and from Great Britain are going to go try to find the person who's trying to sell it. And then they have to take the plans. Anyway, they end up successfully taking the plans away, this box that's the submarine detection thing or whatever. And they have to read some things on it, and so like she and he go back and forth between like, well, that looks like it says oratory. What's an oratory? And so he's like, it's a chapel or whatever. And she goes, no, that's a Stromberg symbol or whatever. And he goes, yes, well, he's got a fishery over in this area. And he's like, actually, it's not a fishery. It's like, no. And she says it's a fishery. And he goes, no, it's a laboratory. And then, and it's in this place. And she goes, no, it's not in this place. It's in this other place. And so they got kind of like do this topping each other type of thing throughout. So
yeah. And aren't Elm and the Soviet Union guy, like their bosses, aren't they in that scene too? Is that the scene where they're kind of behind?
Yeah. So they're both really proud of their agents during all of this and all that. Yeah. So it's great to see an intellectual equal and someone who's actually doing a little bit of kicking ass, even though, like we said later on, she's a damsel in distress by the end of it. But overall, this is probably still my favorite one. I will have when we review into the era of Bonds that I actually grew up with, and the first ones that I did were the Timothy Dalton ones, but Timothy Dalton was never like super Bond to me or anything. It was just that was the first ones I saw. Then the Pierce Brosnan and the Daniel Craigs. I'm sure there'll be some Daniel Craigs that vie for it. GoldenEye will vie for it, but this one is always going to be kind of the standard that I hold up against every James Bond we see from this point.
I was thinking earlier this week or so about like how we haven't really disagreed that much, and I'm like, so if there's like listeners out there that are hoping we disagree on something, it might come. It won't come this week.
Yeah.
No, I think this is. I mean, I think Goldfinger is close. Like if I was to like Goldfinger from Russia with Love would be in the same conversation, but I do think I kind of prefer this one. I agree with you on Barbara Bach. Like I like her, like, and I like the character for the most part, but there is something that, I mean, yeah, she's not, I don't know.
She doesn't feel confident in this role. Like you said, Catherine Deneuve, and I'm like sitting there going, man, what would Catherine Deneuve would have done with this?
I know.
So,
but then I wonder, would Roger Moore be able to play? I don't know.
You're right. I mean, this is one of those where you're kind of wishing Diana Rigg could come back or something, you know?
yeah, that would. Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But I like the character, and I also you talk about her becoming kind of a victim more at the end. Not only that, but the whole like there's a really fascinating conflict going on where she finds out that Bond killed her lover, and they're in the middle of the mission, so she's like, we're gonna finish this mission, but I'm gonna kill you when it's done.
Yeah.
And that creates tension. Not that you really think she's gonna kill him, but that does create some tension. But then the way it's handled, I don't really like, because it's like that's in when they're on the boat, the escape pod.
Yeah.
And then she acts like she's about to kill him, and then she like smiles, and then they have sex.
Right.
It's super weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to feel about that, but it doesn't ruin the movie or anything. It's just, I don't know. I wish they had found a better way to deal with that situation. I mean, I think she does understand it's the job. It wasn't anything personal. Like he wasn't hired to like assassinate the guy. I believe it was just in the moment. It just had to be done.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, he's skiing down the hill, and there's guys chasing him.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I totally can buy that she would see that, but just to go from I'm going to kill you to now I'm going to have sex with you just seemed a little awkward. That's
definitely
the only moment where I'm just kind of like, eh. But no, this film is just awesome. It looks amazing. I don't know if it's. I think it probably has more to do with cinematography than Lewis Gilbert. Lewis Gilbert's a perfectly fine director, but I love looking at this movie. I love all the Egypt stuff is awesome. Obviously,
it really
the
is.
Underwater stuff. I love like also how they play around with stuff like in the layer. Like they have that elevator where I love that scene where he's got the two guys that he's going to pay, and then his secretary. And then he's talking about how this is, by the way, if somebody's listening to that and watch, I'm talking about Stromberg, the villain. And he's like, somebody has been, ratting us out, has been giving away our secrets. And so you assume it's going to be one of those two guys. But then he dismisses his secretary, and she gets on the elevator, and then she falls into the shark tank. So you find out it was her. I don't know. It's just a really cool, like, that's what I think of when I think of a scene with like a Bond villain. And I don't really feel like we had really gotten that scene until now. I mean, the Mr. Bond, we expect you to die, stuff like that's kind of close, but I don't know. I think this is just kind of the over the top, like Austin Powers kind of like jokey moment. And I just think I love it. It's just there's actual suspense built into that scene, and stuff like that. So I love it. I think Moore's great. Maybe the best Bond performance before Daniel Craig in one of his maybe. But even though I do think Connery's probably a better actor, but I don't know that I've liked Bond as much up until now as I did in The Spy Who Loved Me. I mean, like you said, there's definitely some little things here or there I would like to be different, but as a whole, it still is way more effective than the majority, if not all, the ones we've seen up to this point.
Yeah, that that Egypt scene at the beginning is just so stark. So it stands out so much. The production of what they're doing there, and I guess that's I don't know if that's a real thing. People go and they see some sort of historic,
I'm not sure.
Like history of the pyramids or whatever. I know that they apparently, for the scene, they made the crowd digital and all that. It wasn't a whole crowd watching this, but there's the way that it's lit, and there's that music and everything, like the way it will turn dark and then light. It's a big part of the action scenes. And when they're doing this, like this history of the pyramids of Giza and everything like that, all of the production seems to kind of flow along with what's going on in the Bond movie. And then Jaws himself, there's some moments of like real like horror movie type stuff in this. And it's that scene, and then later on when they meet the guy who's selling the plans, that guy goes into a phone booth, and we see Jaws only through, like, there's like bars that kind of block his face, but you still see those menacing metal jaws and everything. And he's like he's like biting down on their necks like vampires, and like a vampire. And it's like really like horror movie type stuff. Then he kind of turns into kind of a comical kind of bad guy after that. But yeah, it's just they do a pretty good job, because it is hard to kind of believe at first that Roger Moore could even like defeat him, but they find some interesting ways to kind of handle that. But yeah, that scene where he's after them and they even get in the car and you think they're fine, and he just fucking rips the top of the car off. He just tears the thing off.
It's very well done. It's very menacing. So I did like him more than I thought I remember, but I think my more issue with him, I think, is the next appearance by him, is where I was just kind of like, eh. And I think I was more saying too, I'd have to go back and listen, but I think I was more saying too, the fact that we don't get returns of some of these more interesting characters, but yet we get him to come back, which I understand, because he was super popular. I mean, I remember as a kid, I knew that Jaws was the shark, and I knew it was this guy in the Bond movies.
Yeah, and of course he has a battle with a shark.
Of course he
at
does.
The end of this. They couldn't possibly not do that. And this is like the third or fourth time the Bond movies had sharks in it. It's something like that.
You feel like Fleming was probably, although he was, I guess, passed away at this point, but you wonder if Fleming, when he was alive, was like, you guys keep doing sharks, but you're not doing giant squids. I don't appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, I thought some stuff I noted, the non sequiturs are getting, or is that the word I'm trying to say? The innuendos are getting a lot less subtle. There's he's on a mission in Austria. Well, tell him to pull out immediately, and then they go to him with having sex or finishing sex. Then there's when one is in Egypt, one should delve deeply into its treasures.
Delve deeply into its treasures, and this is Bond, like, basically just like getting a prostitute at this point, or a concubine, or
such
whatever.
A weird scene.
That's a weird. And there's also something about like when he's trying to buy the plans off the dude, and Barbara Bach walks in. He's like, well, I'll have to look at this figure first, or this is a better figure to look at, or something like that.
There's also another scene with her and him that I love, is that scene on the boat when they're escaping. I guess that's when they're leaving Egypt, right? And you think she's actually trying to seduce him, and she's actually playing his own weaknesses against him, and ends up blowing that. She gets him to give her the cigarette, and then she knocks him out, and she takes. Yeah, whatever that is, what you were talking about, the thing they're looking at, it like in today's movie, that would be like a drive, like that would be like a zip drive or something. But it's whatever that is. So she takes that from him and then just abandons him on that boat, which I thought that was pretty fun.
But it's not too long after that they're together in that one spot. So
it almost just seems like she just wants to best him. It has nothing to do with anything other than that.
Yeah,
they eventually meet up. I thought it was interesting too. The vodka martini comes back. I know I was talking about that a couple movies ago, where I was like, I wonder if that just isn't a thing with Moore, but it does. It pops up in this one. I also wrote the line. I remember this line, but I don't remember what happened. But there was just this one line that struck me as funny. It was when he just says Egyptian builders. But I think the stuff falls on. I guess the stuff falls on.
Yeah,
Jaws.
that's when Jaws like takes something to beat him with, and it's holding something up, and it ends up all the stuff ends up falling.
Was that a thing in the 70s where people made fun of Egyptians for the way they built things? Like I didn't know what. I just thought it was just a weird line.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of little forced things in here where he's just being a troll the whole time while she's driving the van, and he's like, "Women drivers,"
oh yeah, that's true.
Know, stuff like that. That's true. You know, stuff like that.
Oh my god. There's so much porn on the submarine. I just remember like they go in that like room and there's just pictures just fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And then there's like a guy in the dining area, like looking at a Hustler or something, or a Playboy. I mean, it's insane. That's another scene that I hate with Bach, where, I mean, the guy's being nice and is like, you should take a shower in here because she's the only woman on a submarine with a bunch of guys, so she doesn't need to go to the communal shower. But then, of course, when she's in the shower, there's like a slit right there, like where you can,
so that you can just peek in.
And the closest I think a Bond movie has even come to nudity, because you get kind of like the side view.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's been some real, like, I don't think they thought that it was nudity before this. When Connery is in, I think it's Diamonds Are Forever at the beginning, where he pulls that woman's top off. There's a very brief moment there.
Well, I'm sure there's a pause you could make in that scene.
But this is probably the closest to them like actually like ogling someone, and it's really quick, but it's still like long enough.
It's a scene that doesn't need to be there. That guy's like coming in and giving the commander like a paper. There's nothing in that scene that we need to see. And I doubt it could be Barbara Bach. I don't know that it is, because they definitely don't show her face. So a lot of the times I just assume that means it's not the actress, but you never know. And she's done nudity in other films, so that I've seen. Like she's in some giallos and some Italian films around that time. So it could be her. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. It was just a weird scene.
But it is an unnecessary scene. They could have easily cut that, no problem.
Yeah, and then we already talked about the Egyptian thing, but I did mark down just that whole thing with them tracking down Jaws. I love everything about that scene. Yeah, I think that's like, and this just feels from beginning to end, even with the silliness of the villain's plot, which is basically the same thing in all of them. And I mean, that's the same in like movies today, even like a lot of your comic book movies and stuff. I mean, you just have these villains with these insane ideas of what they're gonna, how they're gonna get the world to bow to them. So that's just kind of one of those things I've just let go, and I just enjoy the ride, because if that's going to bother you, you're not going to like any of these movies. So I don't know what else to say about it. And I do find this one a little more interesting just because we have that amazing set design, and we have that really fun like underwater layer to kind of play around in and stuff like that. And I think that what was who plays the bad guy? Jurgen.
Yeah, Kurt Jurgens.
He's menacing in a way. Like he's definitely like he does a good job. Like, I mean,
yeah, if they called him Blofeld, you would have been like, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, he's kind of like a mix of Goldfinger and Blofeld, but he does have a lot of. And they originally had Blofeld in the script, so it almost seems like maybe all they did was change the name.
Lewis Gilbert had worked with Kurt Jurgens again before. I don't remember which movie that is.
I don't either.
But there was, I wondered if he also got considered because he was in The Enemy Below, which was it's a submarine movie that kind of like, so I don't know. Oh, it was Alfie, I believe.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think that was the movie.
The Enemy Below, was that Mitchum? Was that Robert Mitchum? Is that I get that. I think it is, because I get that, and there's another one with there's one with Mitchum. Like Lancaster or something, or maybe it's Gable.
Yeah, it's that's the debate they're having in Crimson Tide, where Run Silent, Run Deep. That's the thing that I think James Gandolfini is having a conversation about in Crimson Tide, where he's like, who was the actor in The Enemy Below? Was it Kurt Jurgens, or was it I can't remember what the debate was, but the guy can't answer, so he makes him do push-ups after.
But anyways, and I think Run Silent, Run Deep is the better movie, but they're both pretty good from what I remember. I like submarine like thrillers and stuff. That's just a cool setting. like Das Boot, and obviously Crimson Tide and Hunt for Red October and all that stuff. But yeah, no, it's a really good movie. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just really good. That elevator trap, though, I did mention it. I remember that scared the crap out of me as a kid. So I know I saw this at a fairly young age. Like I might have been 9 or 10, but I just remember the idea of getting in an elevator and then the floor could just, I do that scene though where Bond somehow evades that. I don't completely get because I don't know how he would even know about it, but maybe he had a report or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have any idea, but yeah, maybe he's been in enough situations at this point to realize that a villain would have a trap door, and he's just, or it could be like, I don't know. Yeah, you're right.
I like the scene though so well. The scene is so well done. Like it doesn't matter. You're just like, that's cool. And it's like actually a pretty thrilling, like, because you think, obviously we don't think he's gonna die, but we know he's going to get, the bad guy eventually, but I don't know. It's just, I love how that scene plays out. So I kind of forgive it. But yeah, no, this one, if for some reason you're listening to this and you haven't watched it, this is definitely one, you should not miss. Are you ready to get on to our rankings? Is there anything else?
Nope.
All right. So we are going to get into our rankings. For the rankings, we are now going to rank this film in 5 different categories. Our scale will be based on something that Bond holds near and dear to his heart, as long as they are shaken and not stirred. That would be martinis. So for each category, we rank from 1 to 5 martinis, 5 being the best damn liquid that has ever passed your lips, 1 being the well liquor you had to settle for or were too drunk to care that night. We've obviously, this first ranking is just simply our overall feeling toward the movie, the story. We've kind of gone over, but where are you going with that?
Yeah, I think this is a 4 overall. Just a few things about it that make it not a 5, but I overall, this is super good. This is like just highly recommend kind of James Bond movie. And I think the only thing that I take 1 off for is that there are so many things that have been done before in Bond movies in this. The Barbara Bach performance knocks it down a little bit, but everything else about it is just pure Bond
I agree.
bliss,
I'm doing a 4 as well. And I think I should say Barbara Bach definitely like looks the part. Like she is very she is obviously a very beautiful woman, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like she fills the role very well. Like it's just something about her line delivery that just I don't know. Like I buy the fact that she's a badass. I buy everything about that character. So she is able to convey those kind of things, but there is something, and it could be the writing could have factored into that as well. But I mean, I've seen her in a few other things, like I said, and she never really stands out. And she didn't really, I don't think she acted even that long. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but
she had not been. I think she started in 1971, but she didn't last long after that. It was about 1986 when I believe she retired. So you don't need to do much after that.
I'm also a 4. The Bond, which is obviously Roger Moore. I think this is easily his best performance. I can't imagine he has a better one after this, but I mean, it has been a minute since I've seen a couple of these. But I'm going to give it a 5 because I just think he's very good in this.
Yeah, I think it's a 5 too. This is his most assured, this is Roger Moore taking full ownership. So
next is the villain, which of course is Jaws. Is I guess the side villain, and then you've got Karl Stromberg as your Blofeld. So what do you think there?
I again, I'm going to give this a 5 as well. I know this is probably higher than what you were going to give it, but I do like Jaws. I do think that's a unique addition to the Bond villain catalog. And I like Richard Kiel quite a bit in this. And you're right. I think the future editions of him is what probably waters it down a little bit. But in this particular movie, he's terrifying. Yep. He can be funny. A lot of different things. And Stromberg, I mean, he is just a Blofeld clone when it comes down to it. But I think he does really well. He does. I mean, all the Blofelds before, was it Donald Pleasance the first time we saw a face, or was it somebody else?
I think so,
before
because
that?
Savalas is after Pleasance, I think. So
yeah, I think it's nothing but arms and a cat for most of the time until we see Pleasance. And Pleasance obviously is great as a Blofeld, and Savalas is okay as Blofeld. But this is the first time since like Goldfinger that we've had a villain that actually gets to be, to get like takes a big. It's first time in a while that it feels like, well, I'm saying this as a Blofeld type of villain. Mm-hmm. Like everybody, there's obviously the other villains in these Roger Moore movies have like Christopher Lee and Yaphet Kotto. They've been very present. It's just that this is the first time we've had like a megalomaniacal guy. I don't know. Yaphet Kotto was kind of megalomaniacal.
I think Jurgens is.
Maybe I'm talking too much out of my ass here.
I know what you mean.
But no, I'm going to overall just say he's great.
It helps that the movie's better, but also the movie's probably better because he's more interesting, So I like Jurgens' performance better than I do Koto's or Lee's. They might be better actors, but like I like this villain, and I do like Jaws in this movie more than I remembered. So I'm giving it a 4. So I'm not that far off. The gadgets, we actually have gadgets in this, quite a few. There's the ski pole rifle, which I quite enjoy. There's the tea set that decapitates people, which I wish we got to actually see that in action. That was fun. This is when he's in the queue area, like they're showing all the stuff. And then, of course, the car, which is really cool, turns into a freaking submersible vehicle. But still, I mean, I'm probably only going to go 3 on this just because it is still a little silly, but it's at least there's more 2 gadgets in this one than we've had so far, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I would give gadgets somewhere around that area 3 or so. I think this is where they're trying to get them back in, and this sounds like a thing that we've been hearing they were trying to get away from, but maybe it was just Saltzman who was trying to get away from them.
Because, I mean, it's like they just all of a sudden there's just like a ton of them, And I think this is one of the first, like where they really, these Q scenes will become a lot more common, where you just see all this random stuff going on as they're walking through and he's going over stuff for them. So, and then last we've got the song, which is Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon. What do you think of this song?
I love this song. I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's very basic. It's basically this woman saying, "Man, nobody has ever had made sex on me like you have."
That's a line. It's a line in the song.
And yeah, exactly. So it's very basic, but I like it. It's kind of reminds me of how Live and Let Die is arranged and everything. There's a lot of just great instrumentation in this. And so I would give this a 4.
I love this song. Is it Radiohead? Did they do a cover of this? Was it Radiohead? Somebody did a cover of this. I don't know. I feel like it was Radiohead. I could be wrong.
It was famously done in Lost in Translation when Anna Faris was singing karaoke.
Yeah, I forgot about
that. And she's like super drunk and everything and trying to sing the song, but that's the only other time that I think I remember hearing another version of that song.
Yeah, they covered it. I don't know if it was, maybe they covered it on the soundtrack then. I don't know. But they definitely did cover it because I have YouTube videos popping up. But anyways, I love this song. I think this is the best song since Goldfinger. I would actually put this a little bit ahead of Live and Let Die. So yeah, but I'm going to give it a 4. I'm giving it a 4 as well. Okay, so we're going to go on to our final segment now, and that is called The Spy Who Reads Me.
Reading is one of my very favorite things to do.
Whoa! I'm not reading that crap. Summarize it in 1 word.
Now you want to talk about reading? Let's talk about reading.
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Cinemasins might have taught you that the book doesn't matter, but for this segment, we're willing to concede it at least kind of does. We're going to give you the nitty-gritty on what is similar to what you saw on the screen and what is different. And there will be plenty of what the hell was Ian Fleming smoking when he wrote this. Okay, so this book is terrible. The best thing about it, okay, so it's the 9th novel in the series. It is also the shortest of the novels. So that alone is, I guess, a bonus, but I don't know what the hell this is supposed to be. Bond isn't in the novel until about 2/3 of the way into it. Up until that point, the entire story is told in the first person by a Canadian woman named Vivian Michelle. The first section of the novel is she is talking about her past love affairs, including how her virginity was taken and how she had an abortion. And then the section, then it like ends about halfway through where she takes a job at a motel. I'd never say this right. It's the Adirondack. How do you know what I'm talking about? The mountains, the Adirondack.
Oh, the Adirondack.
There's a motel up there she takes a job in. The motel is about to close for the winter, and the owner asks her to stay a couple nights, to run it by herself for a couple nights, and then he'll be back. While she's there, these mobsters show up. They've been hired by the motel's owner to set fire to the place so they can collect insurance money, and Vivian will be left as she'll be like the pawn or whatever. Like all the blame will go on her. That's why he wanted her to be there. Conveniently, this man named James Bond shows up. He was driving past on another mission, had a tire go flat, and so he needs a room for the night. He figures out pretty quickly, like the mobsters are already there and she's in trouble, but they're trying to play it off. But he figures out pretty quickly that something's going on. So he decides to help Vivian, and they end up taking out both of the mobsters, or Bond takes out both of the mobsters. And then Vivian, of course, sleeps with him because, that's what happens when you meet Bond. And while this is happening, like a lot of the last few movies, which actually oddly enough didn't happen in this one really, there's a mobster one of the mobsters that they thought was dead shows back up while they're, in the process, and then Bond kills him. Bond ends up shooting him. Vivian wakes up the next morning. Bond is gone. He has left a note just basically saying like, my life is not one for people to be involved with me in, and blah, blah, blah. And then she's basically left thinking fondly about the spy who loved her for one night. It is terrible. I don't understand this book. I don't know what the point of this was. I have no idea. And I couldn't really catch it. Like Fleming actually got really irritated that people didn't like it. And I guess he was just trying to do something a little different, and I can appreciate that. But like, this is just and not only that, but it's like really sleazy. Like everything about it is just like super sleazy. Like the way the Vivian character is treated. And like I said, when she's just talking about her past, like there's all these horrible like sexual encounters that are really just disturbing. And it just, I don't know what's going on here. I have no idea. It's sleazy. It's unpleasant. Some of the worst reviews any of the novels ever got, which isn't surprising. But yeah, just one of those later novels towards the end of Fleming's life. I don't know if that has anything to do with that he was sick. I don't know. I don't know what was going on. But it's crazy. So this is the first book we really came across where they took the title and basically nothing else. Other than they kind of got the idea for Jaws based on one of the mobsters in this book, I guess. But other than that, they didn't take anything. So I don't really have much else on it other than that. I mean, there's not much to it.
Is that really just the whole story?
Yeah, that's
is
it.
Her talking about this?
And Bond just like, it's so weird. Like you would have no idea you're reading a James Bond novel. I mean, you would just have no idea. And then all of a sudden this guy shows up and introduces himself as James Bond. And it's not even like it's a mission he's on or anything. He just decides to help her because he realizes she's in trouble. So he's like, well, I can kill these people. I know how to kill people. And maybe you'll have sex with me afterwards, which she does. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
right.
So do not recommend that book. And I don't think you have any need to read that book because it will do nothing for you in helping you watch the movie. But if you haven't seen this movie, we haven't ruined it for you. I hope, please watch this movie. And if you have seen it, watch it again. It's amazing. It's also one of the ones that I find very rewatchable. Some of these I don't find as rewatchable, but this is one I know I've seen. This is one of the good ones I know I've seen several times. There's weirdly some bad ones I've seen several times, but I think that just had a lot to do with being a kid and it was on cable all the time. Because like I said, I think A View to a Kill might be the one I've seen the most. Maybe Goldfinger, but sadly, I think it's probably View to a Kill because I know there was like a summer where that was on HBO like every day.
Yeah.
But anyways, so thank you all for joining us this week. Also, before we go, we have social media. You can reach us on Twitter. We are at GoldSpy007. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter. I am at SamLoomis13. You can email us at golddiamonddeath007@gmail.com. And if you like this podcast and other things under the Cinemasins brand, we also have a Patreon you can join at patreon.com/Cinemasins. And if you have a second to leave us a 5-star review at your podcast listening app of choice, we would appreciate it. We hope you'll join us again next week. We will be talking about Moonraker, the Star Wars Bond films. But until then, keep the martinis dry and shaken, the Baccarat shoe moving, and the Aston Martin fully gassed. This is Chris Atkinson and Jonathan Watkins signing off, and we will see you next mission.